Thank you so much, everybody, for being here. It is a particular pleasure tonight to welcome not only a colleague, an ex-colleague from Sapienza University, but very rarely do I invite friends over to give talks. You know, sometimes I have invited friends, but this time it is a super friend that I have the pleasure of introducing. And I feel slightly in a bit of a conflict of interest because we are such good friends, but never mind, she's so good that I really wanted her to give a seminar, a SCRIBO seminar. This is the fourth SCRIBO seminar within the series SCRIBO Writing and the Brain. And we are plunging back into Paleolithic times today because Enza Spinapolice is associate professor at Sapienza University of Rome and a Paleolithic archaeologist who has been working both in Europe and in Africa. Her research concerns the relationship between biological and cultural modernity. And to address these really big issues, her research focuses on the Middle Paleolithic and the Middle Stone Age in Africa through the filter of lithic technology. May I ask you, everybody, to switch off your microphones so that we don't have any interruptions? And through this really specific filter, she wants to reach a broader understanding and comprehension of hunter-gatherer societies. But today she's going to plunge deep into the history of symbolism and signs because she will be talking about signs and modern human behavior, distinguishing facts from fiction about early Homo sapiens and the Neanderthals. It is a big issue that she's dealing with today, big analysis, and I'm sure it's going to be as exciting as I know her work to be. But before we start, let me remind you that SCRIBO is on next Friday too. So we're having a triplet of 3 SCRIBOs in 3 weeks. And we will be going back to historical times with Professor Anna Bonifazi from the University of Cologne, who will be presenting a wonderful talk on meaning without sentences, on preprint discourse segmentation in ancient Greek. Same time, 4:30 p.m. Central European time on Zoom. We will be sending you the link shortly and the poster shortly on our social media channels. Thank you so much, everybody, for being here. Thank you, Enza. It is a delight to have you. Over to you.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Silvia. As you were saying, I feel quite home today here because it's you inviting me. Nevertheless, I would like to thank you so much and the organization of the SCRIBO meetings and all the Inscribe team for their support. I wish to thank all of my friends, colleagues, and students who are here, and all of you that I don't know in person. Today, I would like to share with you some thoughts about this big issue. I have to say the title is quite provocative. It wanted to be so. Sometimes I like to be provocative, but I think there are some things I can underline in here today that maybe are original, and I will. Oh, sorry, it's not going on. Sorry, I never give talks on Zoom. Here I am. So I would like to share to you some original ideas of mine that I never share because I never wrote a paper on this topic. Nevertheless, I like very much discuss with friends and colleagues, and I would really like to work more on it in time. So I'm really interested in your feedback. So what I will talk about today, first a short history about the concept of behavioral modernity. Then I will switch to one part dedicated to sapiens and another part dedicated to Neanderthals. Some more thoughts about the theoretical concept behind and analogy and so on, and on the Neanderthal species concept and eventual assimilation, and what was going on with other animal species, for example, chimps, and then some final consideration. So I'll start with the behavioral modernity concept. It is something we all know. We have been hearing about this since a long time now, since 20, 30 years, maybe 40. We are linking this concept with many things, many archaeological materials and records that are linked, of course, to behavior. But if we think in retrospect, so we are talking about modern behavior. So modern behavior has been a concept initially linked to modern humans. If you remember, we used to call modern humans anatomically modern humans, meaning that they are really like us and they do have this phantomatic modern behavior. And now in last year, we are somehow putting on Neanderthals this modern behavior. So this is more or less the debate in which what I'm talking today about is. So the debate on behavioral modernity at first was a contraposition between two ideas, and the idea of a single event when actually the behavioral, the fully modern behavior happened. So like a single event, like linked with some major fact in evolution and in biological evolution often, or a continuum event. For the single event, there have been many theories, many different theories about when is eventually is happening. So is the MSA boundary with the Chilean, is the very end of the Middle Pleistocene and the beginning of the Upper Pleistocene in stage 5, is the very end of the late Upper Pleistocene that more or less correspond to European Upper Paleolithic. And this we go, here we go to one of the main problem with this concept, that is a kind of contraposition between what's going on in Africa and what's going on in Europe. And still, I think we are carrying on with this issue, and we haven't solved it yet. Sorry, still not able to go ahead with my PowerPoint. Okay. So at first, the idea of behavioral modernity was linked to the human revolution. Human revolution was the idea, the notion that cultural modernity is a set of abilities that is conceived as a package, and that was first identified in the European Upper Paleolithic. This happened because if I don't know how many of you are familiar with excavation in Europe, but if you have these long European sequences like Mousterian and then Aurignacian on top, it was so mostly in the 90s, in the end of the 90s, you will find, very boring Mousterian with very, maybe boring is not the right term, but very uniformous with Mousterian and with bones and so on. And then in the Upper Paleolithic, you will find many more raw materials and ornaments and then arts and so on. So from that point of view, this was a revolution. This was something very unusual. It was something I understand my colleague who said, okay, something is going on here. But on another side, what was said in 2000, so 22 years ago, from Alison Brooks and Sally McBurt, was, yeah, okay, guys, in Europe you have this, but have you wondered that in Africa we have a completely different situation? We have no revolution whatsoever. We had an accumulation of behavior that goes on and on and on, with the appearance of characters very old in time and no revolution at all. So there was this very famous paper that was called The Revolution That Wasn't. And to be honest, the idea, the African idea of revolution doesn't work, because the archaeological record in Africa is very different from the European one. And so this is one of the first problem I want to talk about in the behavioral modernity concept, that it was a concept that was, first, it was tailored on Homo sapiens, and second, it was tailored on European Upper Paleolithic. So probably both these two facts has to be taken into account when we talk about Neanderthals. Another problem of this idea of modern behavior is that it was conceived as a package referring to the European Upper pre-Paleolithic that has a list of traits, and if you read papers, you will never find the same list. Okay, this happens to me also with students. They want to, I don't know, to write a thesis, a paper about this, and they say, okay, which one are the characters? Which one we keep? Which one we remove? We take off the list. And this is another problem, because there are behaviors that in the 90s, in the first years of the 2000, we thought they were very revolutionary, and more we are finding that they are quite common. Some of them, they were even conceptually not very well founded. Others stays. So today, I will focus more on the traits that are retained from this list. So the more common, the most common, the one that people like more. So I will mostly talk about science, as I was anticipating in the title, and on the use, possibly on the use of pigments, and then go quite quickly on the other traits. And other things we are used to link with the behavioral modernity concept are those nice maps with the behavior represented by a little drawing and a map, and when it was on for the first time. And again, for the idea of applying the concept to Neanderthals, the first map is always an African map, because mostly all of the so-called modern behavior happened to appear first in Africa, and then they went widespread with the out of Africa movement, okay, with the Homo sapiens going everywhere in the world, so in Eurasia, in Australia, and later on in the Americas. So today, so we start from Africa. This is a very nice map made last year by Jane Wilkins, where we have in blue so the modern behavior, or the innovation in culture, and in orange we have the most important fossil of this time period. As you see from the dates, I don't know if some of you are not familiar with dating we use in Middle Paleolithic. We always refer to dates as BP, so before present, and Ka is kilo years, so we have 80,000, 300,000, and so on. As you will see, we're talking here about a very, very large time span and a continental scale, and the occurrences are quite episodic. Okay, and we have this problem also with fossils. We have a few fossils with a big diversity in a precise time span. So there is a big debate right now in human evolution about the meaning, significance of these early Homo sapiens fossils. But this is not my topic today. One of the behavior I'm ruling out is, for example, today I'm not particularly focusing on is bone industry. It is very typical in European Upper Paleolithic, from Aurignacian on, but in Africa this is quite common from 90,000 years ago. And it's often associated of marine resources. So those bones are basically used as harpoons, as for example, some people from northern latitude are still doing, in historical time. This is a trait to exploit marine resources. To me, it's not very significant. I think it's normal in nature to exploit whatever resource you have. What changes is technology you are using to do this exploitation, and this to me it would be a completely another talk about technology. I would also give this one because the evolution of technology is really important also to understand the cognitive implication of behavior and evolution in general, and so on. Today I'll talk a little bit more about ochre, because there are sites earlier and earlier attesting the utilization of pigments, colorants, and so on. And some of them, a very few of them, are also in Europe. You can see here number 6. is in Maastricht in the Netherlands, and is use of ochre from Neanderthals as early as 250,000 years ago. Sorry, I'm bothered by some noise, excuse me, because I can't, okay, sorry. So the point with ochre is that we often are linking it to body painting and to ceremonies. Okay, we are used to see hunter-gatherers and also pastoralists, other human groups using ochre to somehow what we call in anthropology signaling, so manifesting their own ethnic identity or the identity in the group and so on. We have many ethnicity in Africa, for example, using it this way. But we have to remember that this is not the only reason why we use such element. It works as sunscreen, an insect repellent. It has been used to scrape the hides and so on. So this is one of the situation in which it's really hard to make a straight difference between what is maybe nice to see and what has a purpose. And this idea to have a joint purpose and something aesthetically, I don't know, appealing, or so that if it has to come together or not is one of the big questions we have, because even in our own history, we have a distinction maybe between art and technology, art and craft, and we consider art for the simple purpose of art like somehow higher than the rest, but we actually don't know what was the social implication for those people. Okay, and so probably I think we have to ask ourselves if the question we are asking is the right one. So we should maybe try to narrate this story in another way, more complex way. One of the first sites where this ochre was processed is Bologna is one of my favorite sites ever because it's old, it's very well studied. There are nice lithics, you can see them here. The one is studied from the Middle Stone Age is in the southern part of Kenya, and it has a long raw material transfer behavior, and it has also this ochre processing with the stones and very nice analysis as soon as 300,000 years ago. So this is, I think, right now is the very first time we know this is going on. Another nice site is from Ethiopia, it's called Porkepik. I don't know how many of you know about it. There is a real workshop of ochre studied by my friend Daniela Rosso, and also there are these nice opercula. These are the you see the shells. And they have holes in the middle, and they are really very uniform in the way they are made. So it's very interesting. But this is it's late. It's almost at the end of Middle Stone Age, and the dates for this site are not quite are not really secure. So it's quite discussed. Sorry, just one second. Okay. Another site, interesting site is Pangaea Saidi in Kenya, another very long sequence going from Middle Paleolithic to Upper Paleolithic, saying in African terms from Middle Stone Age to Late Stone Age. We have very interesting technology and bone with science. I will talk more later, and ochre and shells and so on, but going up to later Paleolithic. The star of the talk today is this artifacts from Blombos Cave, very famous. Every time we talk about the behavioral modernity, we show it. Even if someone on Twitter told me it looked like a well-done steak in the picture. This is one of the most complex signs we know from an age so early, but it's not alone in the Blombos sequences. We have a lot of artifact with science, and also some kind of ochre workshop. So this kind of behavior was, repeated in a site that was constantly used, and it's well dated. These stratigraphies from South Africa are kind of a dream for Paleolithic archaeologists because they are so neat, and you can see the fireplaces and the different level of occupations, and it's really a super site. And for sure, something very important was going on here at this during this time span, going roughly from, let's say, 90,000 to 60,000 years ago. And not only in Blombos, we also have the deep kloof rock shelter. Here, the incisions are made on ostrich eggshells, and has been claimed. You see also here this very nice sequence with all the layers, with all the fireplaces, and so a very good archaeological sequence, well known and well dated. These two sites have been put in context, as it has been claimed that the signs follow the same patterns and the same manufacturing style, and they roughly they could have the same social meaning. This actually we don't know. Maybe we can talk about this later. But for sure, something very important was going on in South Africa in this time period, and this is one of the cases when you can really see an intensification of this kind of behavior associated with very dense site and probably an population increase. So a moment where there were people, there were resources, and there were so the opportunity maybe to experiment some more. In Blombos, they also have perforated shells, also very regular. These are called, in French, are called parures. So the idea is that they use this as I'm using my necklace today. But here again, we are linking the parure to the symbolic thoughts, but I'm not so sure. I'm not sure about the symbolic use of the symbolic meaning of jewelry. I think this should be considered as a part and considered in a complete different theoretical model, to be honest. I will be back again with the idea of analogy later in this talk. In Border Cave also we have this. And particularly this bone, I will show you better. This bone has incision quite deep. They are 29, and they are coupled with other incision here on the other side. And in a paper from Francesco De Rico and some colleagues, they are talking about an artificial memory system. So they think this object was used somehow to count. I'm not so sure about that. I don't think it's not true. Actually, I don't know. I'm not sure they have tried all the possible use for this object. You see here, you can see that the object was somehow used. They claim it was used, so the polish is done by using with your hands, so passing on the finger or something like that. But I think it could be also used in other way. If I look at it, it could be maybe a musical instrument or something else, but it's very, very, very interesting object, and I know they are really now deepening this idea of artificial memory system, and this is really interesting. So maybe one of the best things I'll show you today. From Border Cave, we had this wonderful paper that was claiming a continuity of behavior from LSA to modern people, modern Bushmen, for example, from these digging sticks. You know, those are sticks that are used by women to dig the ground, to have vegetables and seeds and other resources to eat. But not also only this one. This is also the first time, we know for sure that poison was used, and this is really fascinating. Oh, sorry, here I'm already at Neanderthals. Poison was used, and there are also these ostrich eggshell beads that were used, are still used. I have necklace both in Africa with exactly the same shell, and here they were manufactured, and so on. This is just a preliminary conclusion about African evidence. So we have the oldest evidence. We have an evidence coupled with the origin of Homo sapiens, so our species, the one about on which the behavioral modernity concept was built. And also we have at least a claim of a cultural and also genetic continuity. I did not have the time today to speak about it, but there are claims of a genetic continuity of this population since the Pleistocene in certain areas, like for example in Botswana and so on. History, and now we will see what happens in Europe. I enjoyed yesterday to work a little bit more about this collage of Neanderthal in pop art, in imagination, because the Neanderthal man is the caveman for excellence. Okay, so if you say caveman, you imagine a Neanderthal man, and so it goes. The presence of Neanderthal in our life goes by posters and movies and cartoons and so on. So it's very powerful. Lastly, I was saying before to Sylvia that I often hear people say, we used to say Neanderthal is a brute, is a primitive man, and so on and so on. But I think that in recent years, the narrative about Neanderthal has dramatically changed. This picture were taken in Paris in 2018. There was a big exposition in Musée de l'Homme on Neanderthals, with more or less all we know right now about Neanderthals. And this was the last room of the exhibition, and there was this wall and this big written on the wall was Neanderthal, they're just like us. And this was me, and this was the Neanderthal reconstruction of a Neanderthal girl. She was more or less tall as me, like me, and I took a selfie with her. It was very nice exhibition, but actually I don't think Neanderthal are like us. And I will explain you a little bit more what I think about Neanderthals, and that is not diminutive that I don't think they're like us. First, just a little bit of paleoanthropology. This is a slide I stole from Fabio Di Vincenzo. I don't know if he's here right now, so about the evolution of Homo sapiens and the evolution of Neanderthal. Okay, we have this common ancestor, which is called Homo heidelbergensis. Homo heidelbergensis was spread in Europe, in Africa, and eventually in Asia for a very long time. So it's the common ancestor of both Homo sapiens and Neanderthals. The divergence between sapiens and Neanderthal from paleoanthropology, from genetic, from everything, is estimated at 500,000 years ago. So we're talking about two species that have a very long history separated, okay? All of this time, they were in Europe, our species were in Africa. So there have been claims. We know that there was an interbreeding at the moment when sapiens went out of Africa and met the Neanderthal in particularly probably in the Levant, there was interbreeding, and we know that there are claims for assimilations. But to me, I'm not a paleoanthropologist. To me, what I know is that Neanderthal as a species, it works still. There are no claims from paleoanthropologists to dismiss the species of Neanderthal. So the idea of assimilation, what is based on a progressive intrusion of Neanderthal genes into sapien genes once they came into Europe, once sapiens came into Europe. And it's based on this possible 3% of Neanderthal genome we has been detected in modern day humans. But actually what I know, what I understand about the story is that if there would have been such assimilation, the degree of Neanderthal genes introgression of Neanderthal genes into our DNA would be much more higher. And also the Neanderthal species then wouldn't have necessity to be, but I've never heard any paleoanthropologist ever saying that the species has to dismiss. So what I think is that behind the idea of label the Neanderthal behavior as a modern behavior, there is this idea of assimilation. And to me, this doesn't work. And so to me, the idea of modern behavior has to stay with modern humans. And then for Neanderthals, I would love to talk about Neanderthal behavior. I'll show you, yeah, this is what I was anticipating. So this very famous picture, still from Derrico and I think Hanselwood from some years ago, it puts together all of this modern behavior that is from archaeology, from material culture, of course, and it puts together so artifacts from Africa and artifacts from Europe, because there is a strong idea to put them together and to look to them as a whole. And so, as I was saying, to me, this makes no sense if we don't also think to the two species as a whole. And at the moment, I don't think it is the case, because there is a long history of each species separated apart. So I would love to talk about Neanderthal behavior. Why not? We know Neanderthal were very advanced in many things. For example, the care and the health care. So they care for elder people, and both La Chapelle-le-Saint and Chalidar tell this kind of story. I didn't have the time to put in this presentation today all of my material about Neanderthals. Those are my favorite species ever. I'm studying them since I don't know how many years, since I was a student. So there is I don't have the idea to dismiss in any way their behavior, their adaptability, the thing that they survived in glacial Europe for so long. The only thing is that I don't want to assimilate them with us. So probably it's possible they had some kind of care for the dead. They buried maybe some of them. There are signs for burials, but sometimes they are really discussed because these sites were excavated very many years ago, so with different methods. But nevertheless, there are some Neanderthal skeletons are full and well preserved, and probably this is the result of some kind of burial, and others that are very fragmented. And also they did cannibalism, and they were sometime eaten by hyenas. So it's patchy, you know, it's not that all of them did the same things, and also because they existed for a very long time in a very big continent. Again, this idea of symbolism linked to the sign. Okay, no, this is here we're talking about feathers. We know Neanderthals use bird feather. We know this because of the butchering mark on some special part of the wings of the birds. So we know they extracted the feather. Okay, and this is the representation that is going now. I mean, that we are used to see now about them, with feather in her hair and some kind of marking, red marking on them, and also some clothes as a necklace and so on. So this is the idea of symbolic. Again, symbolic Neanderthals, and of course they could have wear like this and be dressed like this, and put feather in their hair. Nevertheless, I don't know what does it means for them. Okay, Still, I don't know. It has been claimed that Neanderthal has this cult of the sunbird because of this widespread relation with the golden eagle. So it has, there are a few sites, I think 3 or 4 sites where we can find golden eagle feathers. I mean, golden eagles bird with butchering marks. So it could be there was a special relationship between Neanderthals and birds. We actually don't really know how was their symbolic word, how they represented the word to themselves. We also have traces of pigment, as I was saying, as I was telling to you. There are a few occurrences of perforated shells or ochre shells. And there are incised bones. This one, I will talk you more about this, and this one as well. There is this one from Kikoba, is a site in Crimea, but this site was excavated, I think, in the 30s of the 20th century. So the provenience of this item is not so sure. We are not so sure about the date. It's nice because, you know, it's a carving on the cortex of the flint, and I don't know how many of you are familiar with the flint or are flint knapper, but it's something, it's nice to touch the cortex when the flint is nice like that. And the markings, it has been studied, and you can see where the mark starts here and the direction it goes. So it's very nice artifacts. And it's a flake. You see, it's here. There is prepared platform and so on. And this comes from another site in Crimea. Again, it has these signs here. It looks quite similar to the other one, the possible artificial memory system I was talking about before. This is in a time range quite peculiar, and also the previous one, because it's a period where when actually Homo sapiens could have been in Europe, but I don't want to spoil what I'm going to say next. So I go on with the markings and signs. This is another bone from Le Pradel. It's really nice as well because it has these marks made, of course, with a flint. They're very deep, you see, and they are not really regular. I mean, they're the same line. The line goes from top to bottom like that. I don't know if you can see my mouse, my pointer. And at the bottom, you can see these very teeny tiny marks that are here associated with the bigger one. It's really hard to understand, especially the smaller ones. So I think this piece is really interesting, and it has been done in experimentation, asking to, of course, young students, Homo sapiens, to mark a bone with the 9 signs, and the interval that was made in this experimentation was different, was more regular, the one done from the experiment. So we don't know if Neanderthal, they wanted this rhythm or they wanted it more regular or whatever. We don't know why this one is smaller, it's less deep, and I don't think we know the significance of this marking. And Francesco De Rico thinks it is again an artificial memory system, so it's used to count. The nice thing is that you can see, you can feel the marking with your finger. And so this is the reason why he was saying, okay, you use it really. But this is broken. So I don't know exactly. It's not sorry. It was broken a long time ago, so we don't know how it was when it was used. So I'm not so sure either. It could be really nice, the idea. Okay, a Neanderthal counting up to 9 and using it to count. But what is actually counting? I don't know. Maybe we can have a nice discussion about what Neanderthal can count later when I'm done. This is another bone, engraved bone. This is a slide I took online from the authors. So this really nice one is an Strada agalus with very nice nicely markings in two different directions. And astragalus, I don't know how many of you are familiar with bones. It's really nice bone. And of course, here we have an amazed Neanderthals watching his masterpiece. Of course, but I have to say I'm quite not sure about the stratigraphic provenience of this bone. This again a slide I took online on ResearchGate from Leder et al., who presented this in a conference this year, I think. So it's quite updated. I think there are quite some problem with this picture. First, I see a lot of infinite dating in here and different labs for the AMS. I'm not so sure. Second, we all know people who are used to excavate in caves, that what you have, we say controparete in Italy, against the wall, often has been very oh, sorry, I can't find the word in English today, bioturbated. So it's not really stable as sediment, because, you know, there is always water going on and animals and things and that. So often the earth is softener there. And so the layers are not good. And also we have this, and this is really not good for me. And the bone is at the junction of these two layers, and I would not be so sure about this provenience. This is not to criticize the work of the colleagues, but if it would happen to me to find it in this situation, I would say, I don't know, I would think it's intrusive from somewhere else. Okay. Now we go to another part, very debated, about Neanderthal behavior in Europe, about what is art, rock art. I'll discuss here today mostly about the sites discussed by Hoffman and et al. In 2018, and a little bit about Gorham Cave. So maybe you know, a few years ago, 4 years ago already, Science has had this nice cover with Neanderthal art, because 3 sites, all the sites, I mean, sites that were known since long time with rock art in Spain, were redated, and the dates were particularly old, so older than expected. This art was attributed to Upper Paleolithic, Solutrean, wherever. There are the stencil hand and some raffiguration animals and peoples, and some representation like this one, and so on. So it's like a classical rock art site from Europe. And so when the dated came out, it was dated around from the oldest one were around 70,000, and the youngest one were about 40,000 years ago. But there are so many problems with this paper. There have been so many replies and so many comments, kind of like, okay, I'll take my popcorn and have a look to this. I have to say, I have not, I removed the very technical slide I had on the method for datation and so on, because I didn't want to be boring. They actually dated the crust, the carbonate crust on top of the pigments. The problem is that the dating of this kind of uranium thorium carbonate crust in cave is very problematic. So there were some some other people who do dating who were not convinced, and so wrote a reply, and then again and again. To me, as an archaeologist, the big problem with this is that it's the direct link with Neanderthal. There is no Neanderthal in these caves. There are no fossil. There is no Mousterian, and even if there would be Mousterian, I will say you later, it's not so conclusive, possibly. So to me, these caves are really problematic. I go with Gorham Cave. This is the famous hashtag sign. This is located in Gorham Cave. Gorham Cave is Goram Cave is at the very bottom of the Iberian Peninsula, very close to the Gibraltar Straits, a very nice site, well excavated and so on. Still, I didn't put so many images from the excavation and the stratigraphy, but it has been discovered and dated around to a layer dated around 45,000 years ago. What strikes me in this is that it has been really hard to make. That's why I wrote you the citation here. So it would have need between almost 200 and 300 strokes to make it. This first line is very deep, and I'm sure that with flint doing this is very engaging. So I'm really sure that this sign has been made for a purpose, because if you do things without purpose, maybe you don't spend half a day doing it. And also it's located, the author says it's located in a very important part of the cave where there is a bifurcation. So maybe it's a kind of signaling of some way. And it's really, really interesting. So my problem is, and really I'm not ironic, and I don't want to be excessively polemic, but you see, Goran Cave is here. And here is Morocco, and here there are the other sides I was talking about with the Iberian art made by Neanderthals. Here is Morocco, and in Morocco we know Homo sapiens clade was present since 300,000 years ago. And also what you can see here are those lines where eventually the sea could be, you know, lower in some particular moment of the prehistory. We know the strait was never fully closed, but we know this part of the earth and this one has been closer for maybe long time. And what I put you here is this, you know, the swimming cross strait of Gibraltar. There are many people doing this. This guy did it in 4 hours, 27 minutes, and this is the paper he got after doing it. I've seen also people doing it in, I don't know, 8 hours or something like that. And I'm not joking. There is an association about crossing the Strait of Gibraltar. There are, it's for now, right now they cross where there are around 14 kilometers, and you can register and just go there, and you actually can see Africa from there. So now what I would like to understand is why we are not testing the crossing of Gibraltar by Homo sapiens before. I would like to understand why we just say, this is Neanderthal art, this is the Gibraltar hashtag, and we don't say, okay, it could be Neanderthals, it could be Homo sapiens who crossed Gibraltar before. I think it's an hypothesis that has to be tested at some point. And right now it's like a taboo, okay? If you say this, you will be felt like, what are you saying? There is no evidence. They say, okay, there is no evidence, but has anyone looked for it? Has anyone made a research program saying, okay, let's check, let's see if this happened, because it can happen. Okay, my mom, she's 66, she can swim 14 kilometers. And hunter-gatherers were fit. I mean, otherwise they wouldn't have survived. So to me, this, I mean, for me, my personal path in the future would be very interesting to know more about this this possibility of passing. I'll go now with some kind of archaeological theory. I hope I'm not going too long. So
fine, Enza.
usually
You're fine.
I'm fine. Okay. I have just some here now about analogical reasoning, and then maybe some conclusions. So we use analogy, and sometimes we overuse analogy. Why do we use analogy? Analogy is our only recourse. Haydn said this in 1973, and actually it's all that we have, okay? So we can do explicitly the analogy, or implicitly, but we are more or less, it's always or often in our background. There are methods. There is this, Yellen wrote this in 77, but still maybe it's worth to have a look again to it. So the logic and practice of analogy, you can have analogy at a different level. And if you want to build an analogy, you first have to build it theoretically and declare, in my opinion, how you are building it. But all of these analogies, and it works, okay? It's very nice, the idea that we can actually link the archaeological record, something like 28,000 years ago, to some material culture. The idea that there are people here now living the same way as our fathers and the father of our fathers and so on. And as I said, it worked. This paper is quite nice. You can see that experimentally, these people are still making exactly the same ostrich eggshells in the same way, and they are using the digging stick the same way. And in this case, you know, it can work because it is in the same place at the same people, and so we can somehow accept it, even if there are problems, because modern hunter-gatherers are marginalized, are not as they used to be. We have to imagine our hunter-gatherers in the past as people who had all the possible world, all the possible resources. They could do anything, whereas the one we know now, they live in marginal environments. Sometimes they don't have enough to feed their children, and they are considered poor in our perspective. So we don't have to attribute to them things we are imagining, okay? Because this would be also unrespectful, I think. I will skip this one. Yeah, this was just to show you how far it can go, the analogy, and how nice was the study with organic material. And they found with spectrometry, they found poison in it, and the digging sticks I showed you already. And this one are the digging stick from Ethnographic Museum here in Johannesburg. And you see, you can't really see the difference between the archaeological one and one they were using until a few years ago. But the question again is for Neanderthals. Okay, there are problems with ethnographic analogy, sometime with Homo sapiens and modern hunter-gatherers. To me, there is a big problem with ethnographic analogy applied to Neanderthals. If we still agree that they are another species, and I'm still in for it. And if they're not another species, I want to hear why from paleoanthropologists. Then I go to the third part of my talk, which is about the other species, okay? I'm getting fonder and fonder of primatology. I'm running a project right now in primate archaeology, and I really like the idea of this very close relative of us that had entered their own Stone Age. So now they are in their own Stone Age, happy like that, learning to use tool and applying more and more diverse behaviors, and leaving a trace in archaeology. And we know these behaviors go back, and we are having excavation, and we are now trying to understand how far in the past goes such behavior. And this is not it. We are not going into the interpretation of some kind of ritual or symbolic, some of us would say, in the chimp behavior, particularly the chimpanzees. You see, these are some of titles that I found with a very quick search. So the primatologists, they are quite happy now with this idea, okay, to call it ritual and symbolic. As an example, I put here this very nice paper from a few years ago about this stone throwing. I don't know if you heard about it. I wanted to put a video in, but it didn't work, and I knew that with Zoom it would have been a mess. But basically what happens is the chimpanzee, they pass by this tree and they start drumming, which is a behavior they do to show up. And then they toss a stone against the tree or in the hole, the big hole in the tree. And this also results in some kind of archaeological record, okay? Because future archaeologists will find this, this stack of stone, and good luck, guys. And so this is a repeated behavior. So many chimpanzees from the same group do it, and it happens in different places here in West Africa. So this has been called a ritualized behavior. Of course, the press has soon said it's a shrine, because of course they like to be impressive. But at the same time, you know, it's something that right now has not direct explanation. They're happy to throw this stone there. They're happy to say, okay, I'm passing by here, and I leave a stone. You know, voila. And this is really interesting. Another really interesting behavior in chimps is what they do sometime with death. They have a consciousness of death. Also gorilla, they have, like, they don't want to accept that sometimes, so they keep on carrying babies when they die, but it happens more and more to find them mourning. I mean, I say mourning because I don't have another term, but they go around the dead chimp, and they go around and they stand there. And sometimes, in this case, it was particularly interesting because they were cleaning the body. So is this a ritual? Why do they do it? And so on. But if we can consider them as, you know, chimp behavior, this is chimp behavior. It can be ritual. It can have a lot of significance that sometimes goes beyond what we can understand as Homo sapiens. Why couldn't Neanderthal have it? I mean, to me, they can. This is chimp art. I really like it. This is from Congo. This was a chimpanzee working on with Desmond Morris. I did some nice painting, and here I go to the end of my talk. This is a paint from a chimp, and I read that he enjoyed it very much doing it. So he had all of these colors, and he went on, and many times he put on things, layers and layers of painting and color and so on, and then he forget it. So he never showed any interest in keeping it. Okay, so it was the enjoying of seeing, you know, the consequence of your action. I see the same with children, with very young children. At first, if you give them a pencil and they draw a line, and they are amazed, like, what did I do? But it's not because they want to keep the line, they just want to see what happens. I was chatting yesterday, I was saying it's a little bit like cats when they throw things down the table. It's like, because they're making things happen, and they feel smart. So we go back to what makes us human. Are we human because we use ochre? Yes. Are Neanderthal human because they use ochre? Yes, but I think they are human in their own way. And I think we, sapiens, we have our own way to be human. You see, I saw this few months ago. This should be the anatomically modern humans on the left and the Neanderthals on the right. And from this kind of representation, what you see is that, you know, there are very poor and few evidence over a long time span for both. I don't think so. I think the evidence for Neanderthals are concentrated at the very end, when they possibly met the sapiens and something very important happened, or they are very ambiguous, or they are very few, and we don't really know their meaning. Whereas on the sapien side, we can see an accumulation of culture. I didn't have time to fill in some idea about cumulative culture, but this is really important. You know, we have gone far, okay? In the origination, we started all of this, you know? Yeah. So I have 2 slides with the summary and then 2 final slides. So I think the concept of modern behavior is built upon Sapiens, and it stands with us, okay? So we can ask when we became modern in the sense when we became what we are, but evolution never stops. So we are still, I mean, in evolution, evolving and changing. So long time passed and still things are going on. I think in the modern revolution and modern behavior, there is anthropocentrism and there is Eurocentrism. So it's a concept I don't really like that much. Also, we have to become better in using analogy. And I think a formal respect for each species, both fossil and living, is to study them for what they are. Okay, I like the Neanderthals, and I like the Neanderthal for what they are. I'm not on this ring. I put it on the right. I don't want a battle. I don't want that one is better. I don't want to say that one is smarter. I know that each of us has his evolutionary path, has his behavioral path, and things are like that. I don't need to be paternalistic to Neanderthal, like, oh, bravo, ah, fantastic, ah, yeah, this is so fantastic. I don't like this. I like Neanderthals for what they are. And on another side, I think we have something different that can maybe start from a common basis with Neanderthals, because we have many things in common. We have a lot of DNA in common. We had a way of life in common and together for hundreds of thousands of years. So the way of living in group, the hunting, many other behaviors. So why not? For sure, we have some behavior in common, but as I say, we have been so far. Okay, Neanderthals are an extinct species, and we, in our use of sign and representation, we have constructed and deconstructed so many times. We went figurative, we went abstract, we went rational, and art is linked to so many other aspects of the society. For example, technology. There have been moments in history when art was the representation of all the geometry we know, all the architecture, all the technology we had. So it's not to be presumptuous, but we have gone very, very far away. And we live in a world where imagination is really important. So we tell stories all the time. We need to tell stories to ourselves and to our other children. We share stories. If I say Harry Potter, if I say Santa Claus, if I say Jack Sparrow, I can communicate with only one word to millions of people about something that doesn't exist. In this, we put art, we put skills, we put sociality, we put so many things. And to me, I think that this, together with some particular relation with technology, so between our body and what is outside, that allowed us also to arrive here, I really think this is peculiar to us and to non other species. And with this, I think I'm done.
Thank you so much. As usual, a little bit of housekeeping. If you want to ask a question, you can raise your hand and you can then unmute yourself once I let you and ask your question. But I usually abuse of my position and ask the first one, although I see already that there's one raised hand from Sarah, one from Christina, but I'm going to abuse of my position anyway. Why not? Of course, I'm interested in the mentioning of the artificial memory systems, Enza.
Mm-hmm.
And although there is a lot of debate on the tagging of bones and whether they represent a way of storing information through counting, I wanted to ask you whether, formally speaking, because you seem to suggest that the Neanderthals did not use, you showed examples, they
I don't know.
Well, perhaps they didn't, but whereas there is a strong claim to be made as to the possibility of counting happening, both for Homo sapiens and for Neanderthals. And I wanted to ask you sort of a descriptive question, really. There's nothing particularly intellectual about it, but is there any formal difference in the ways in which these tags are made? Because I wouldn't go so far as to call them signs. They are not signs, because sign is a fully loaded term that one needs to define before they use them. But let's call them marks for the sake of being neutral. But is there any formal pattern that you see that can actually help us in narrowing down their function in the Neanderthal examples vis-a-vis the Homo sapiens ones? Because before you can actually prove that counting is involved, you need to see a sequence, you need to see the possibility of addition, you need to see the possibility of multiplication happening. I mean, how do you validate a statement such as that? And how does it formally show in the differentiation, if there is one, when it comes to the tagging in the Neanderthal context? And the
problem to me is that it's really hard to validate. This is my problem, my first problem. You know, what I see in this kind of paper is a lot of technicism, because the colleagues are really good in studying the marking, how it was done, how long it took, what was the instrument, and what is the direction. So you can see the gesture somehow. But of course, it's not enough. So the idea of from the authors is that the signs, the marks, were made in different moments. So this is why they claim it's some kind of notational, because it's not decoration. They say because it's, you know, sometimes you add the mark. But I think this is the one from Blombos. The one from Le Pradel, probably it was made all together, and there are those small sign down there. So I don't see why it should be counting mark. I can't see how you can.
Sorry to interrupt you, but this is really important, because if you see no formal differentiation between sapiens and Neanderthal, then it's either a yes answer for both, or a no answer for both.
No, the objects are quite different, because the one from Blombos is very polished. You see the marks are on top of the thing, and there is polish, so it means it has been somehow used. Okay, and it seems more functional. You know, you can do things with that stuff, whereas the other one, they say you can feel the mark with your thumb. But it's it could also be just a marking, you know, without really a function to me, because it can't have another function. Whereas the other one, the one from Blombos, you can attach, for example, a string on it, or you can pass a piece of wood and do or whatever. But they say, okay, they added the marks after. So probably they were counting and they wanted to add numbers. But there are so many reasons why you can add one incision later. So I really don't know. To me, to say that our artificial memory system, you should try to test many things, but there are differences between the two. And also, as I said, they did an experiment, and the humans, they tried to reproduce the Neanderthal. They weren't able to reproduce it. Actually, what they did, it was different. It was more regular somehow. So the standard variation doesn't really work to overlap the experiment. And they are saying this in the paper, that it's not really the same. And I'm not surprised. Also, because you are doing an experimentation without knowing why. They say, okay, you have to mark this bone with 9 marks. okay, you know, if you don't know why you're doing this. So you say, you're playing with this bone, make marks would be something, or you have to mark to remember something. But the experiment itself, I'm not sure is well done. But
yeah,
again,
of course, you can't suggest a purpose in an experiment such as that, because you end up being right.
And so this is a circular argument finally, and this often happens so in this case, and it's very deceiving.
Yes,
that's why, you know, this is sorry, then I will go with the other question. This is the ultimate reason I never worked on this stuff, because I don't like not to be able to answer. And so finally I say, yeah, you know, okay, it's a sign, or not even a sign, because it doesn't
not
have
a sign, that's for sure.
So it's a bluff. Also, there is, you know, play. We never talk about play, but in all the society, primate society, human, whatever, the children learn playing. And for sure, there is an archaeological record of children we completely ignore. So I don't know if I replied.
I did. I have more questions, but I'll leave the floor to Sara Talamo.
Sara.
Ciao, Enza.
She's on the attack.
No, the attack, I don't think so.
Oh, the attack never to Enza, but of course I'm a little bit sad that you didn't put the jewelry of Poland as a origination and as done by Homo sapiens, full of sign. That I
yes, but because I didn't want to go into origination, because it would have been forever, you know.
I know, but also the fact that you didn't talk about Baccio-Chiro compared to Arcis-sur-Cour stuff.
Yes, this could have been nice. You're right.
This is the part that we're talking. For me, is also okay. We don't know the behavior of Neanderthals versus modern human, but I see more and more the fact, especially after Baccio-Chiro came out, the jewelry of Baccio-Chiro compared to the jewelry of Arcis-sur-Cour, I see more and more the imitation from the Neanderthal species.
You know, when I was, I didn't really have the place to put it on, but I think we should consider things in like three ways. So we consider, okay, Homo sapiens in Africa, and Neanderthals in Europe before the arrival of modern humans. And you can ask to, I see Andra is here. I told her this a few days ago, so she can say it. And this part of possible contact, we should treat it differently, because actually we don't know, and we have to test finally properly with right questions this, because we can't say a behavior is Neanderthal if we are not completely sure it was before any possible contact with sapiens. So I think we agree.
And the problem I have as a radiocarbon specialist, as always, all the proof that we have before the Homo sapiens come, and also during the stay together, is due to the time, is due to the bad dating we have, not dating the bone itself, but dating the context that is amazing, is really mixed or very, very problematic. So, and with this chronology they speculate a lot. And nowadays, with the new advance of radiocarbon, we cannot permit to speculate on this stuff when they start the behavior. What you can say when start the behavior if you don't have any dates that actually are go to the point. I mean, the Venus of Willandorf, no, Willandorf is not, but the Geisenkloster, the Ohlefels, and everything like that. There is no date associate directly with these ornaments. And the one you explain, the leather et al. Stuff made by Neanderthal, you have also to say to, I would like to say to the audience at least, you have to remember that this stuff could be old because the direct date is an old piece of bone that the Homo sapiens arrived there, since they have as well, and start to cut an old bone. If you don't do an experiment of that.
Yeah, you're right. Yeah, you're right. But to be honest, when I saw the stratigraphic position of that stuff, to me, it's conclusive, because would you ever sample a bone to have a date in that hole there? Never. I mean,
of course, no, but of course.
So the thing is that they are not conclusive, and they are very few, and they're not conclusive. And all the better evidence we have is from 40,000 on. So exactly when. And also, yeah, not to say of the data about the Spanish cave art, because also
exactly.
These are amazing. I mean, Dirk Hoffman was at the Max Planck, like me and Enza, and of course he presented the paper at the Max Planck when he came out. But I never saw in my entire career so many comments on the methodological stuff, which is not only very difficult, the Uraniotorium, which is okay. The part was that they screw up, they didn't consider, let's say, the youngest ages.
Yes. They have ages at 40, 45, 35. They completely dismiss them as they don't exist.
Yeah, and this is the, I mean, so many comments on one single paper, years by years, and years come out something new. No, means something.
I wanted to ask a question about this, but I'll leave it to the end. Cristina.
So I was wondering, how physically difficult is it to make these marks? Because I am one of those people who's a compulsive doodler, or even if I don't have a pencil, I will just put marks and stuff, like repetitive marks with my nails. Mm-hmm. So I'm wondering, like, are these being made with the intent to communicate, or could it just be that they're completing this action as like a kind of
It's not that hard. It's not that hard. Then it depends if you do it on fresh bone or on fossilized bone, because we now see fossilized bone that are harder, but fresh bone are not that hard. You can try. You take a stone, you break it, and next time you have a steak, you try to cut the bone, and you see it's not as cutting bread, but it's not that hard to me. And also, these people did have handling of, bones, of flint, and all of this that we actually don't have. So I don't think it's that hard, and that's why also I mean, me too. I used to write. Each of us do things like that, and so this one, okay, the Neanderthal one, it was really regular. I mean, it wasn't, but it's. I mean, being in the brain of a Neanderthal, to me, is presumptuous. I study lithics, which are easier, since I don't know how many years, too many. And now I start to understand how they reason when they have a problem, how do they solve it? And this is more technical skill, but being in the brain of someone sitting there 50,000 years ago with a bone in his hand, I'm not able to. So I just, I answer. Yeah, but the one on the rock, the Gibraltar one, this one was hard. I don't think it's easy to carve like that in the stone wall of a cave. Is really you want to do it. To do it. Yeah.
Mattia.
Okay, can you hear me? Yes. Thank you very much, Enza. This presentation was incredible. I really enjoyed, and so rich in the archaeological data. I'm sure I'm going to watch the seminar.
How many I removed because there were too much. And Sarah wasn't happy either.
It was great. But I want to discuss the idea of information exchange, because already in during the prehistory in Neolithic, and I'm sure already in the Paleolithic, groups were in contact. Groups exchange artifacts, right? And I really like the fact that when you spend a slide on the street of Gibraltar talking about, we could explore the the possibility that, Homo sapiens were actually crossing it and occupied Europe much earlier. In fact, I mentioned to you, these new finds, the Grotto Mandrin, where, it seems that from the discovery of this child's tooth, Homo sapiens, arrived in Europe 54,000 years ago and not 40 years ago. So it could be the Neanderthals. And I don't want to get into dating, but the possibility that Neanderthals and Homo sapiens were in contact and then were exchanging artifacts, then were communicating, perhaps even with symbols for 10,000 years ago is a possibility. So
with
I want to hear
symbols,
your
I
opinion
don't
about
know.
that.
With symbols, I don't know. I was speaking with Sarah because we basically, I think, agree that if we admit that when sapiens entered in Europe, they found Neanderthals, and right now it seems it was so, there was an interaction, and the interaction, of course, has many aspects, but basically is a social interaction. And also, I think if there has been some interbreeding between the two species, not in Europe at the moment, also in Europe, maybe a few generations before, but we don't have that many Neanderthals sequence with we don't have many sequence with interbreeding, but anyway, it also means that there has been some kind of communication between the two groups. So at the same time, it wasn't that big, because otherwise there would have been much more Neanderthal DNA. And so this is the same for science, for symbols, for art, for anything, for culture. I think people who are trying to understand acculturation by lithics are doing great, because this is material culture. These are tools you have to use every day, and maybe you see someone doing things in a way it can be useful for you and better, and so you integrate very quickly the novelty, and it happens many times in history. But with the exchange of ornaments, right now there is an hypothesis of more of coping. We study how things are made. So Sarah is right. I should have maybe compared the RC sur cure jewelry with the Bacciocchiro one, because sometimes you can do the same thing in the same way, or the same thing in different way. And the way of doing things is coded and culturally coded, so you can understand many things. But right now there are not that many hypotheses to test or site to test and direct evidence, and it's very hard to tell. I don't know if I answered.
I mean, there are hypotheses. There's no right or wrong answer here. So, but thank you, Enza. I mean, it's of course maybe next year we'll find other artifacts, and our perspective about Neanderthals and Homo sapiens connection, we will change again. So thank you.
Of course, if you don't ask the right question, you will never have the answer.
Yes,
this is what I think.
Thank you.
I think Sarah raised her hand again.
Yeah, just a quick comment on Mattia. And Grotmandren. Please, Grotmandren is found this Homo sapiens tooth into a layer that is a completely mixed with, on top we have modern human, very recent, and they never dated the direct tooth. Of course, is impossible, but also the surround dated by the Oxford team is unbelievable bad. So they put older than 45,000. Nowadays with radiocarbon, you can give an age, but unfortunately they do a very bad job at the moment. So they want to calculate on this. So Grotmandren is really from I assessed, I'm still in the community of Max Planck when we discuss paper. in paleoanthropology, and everybody are amazed about the situation there. It's still not clear, and we need further investigation and Godbandren before to say that Homo sapiens was in France at 55,000, where we don't find nowhere else. I mean, just Bachokiro and then France. Ooh, no, first France. Just a little precision. Yeah.
Thank you, Sarah. Thank you.
She's on a mission. I knew that. Never have a chronologist as a friend. You can never make mistakes such as those that you made, Mattia. Are there any more questions? In the meantime, Enza, let me tell you that you've had attendees from Japan, from Ireland, from Canada, from the US.
Fantastic. Thank you so much.
All
I
over the
enjoyed
world.
it a lot.
Neanderthals are a global magnet. There is a question from Andra.
Right, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes, good. So thank you very much for the talk, Enza. Of course,
You're
I'm very much interested in in all this debate for a reason that you are, of course, aware of. I was wondering about, it's more of a comment than a question, I think. But what about thinking locally? Right, so when we think about interactions between populations of Homo sapiens and Neanderthals, we talk, we usually make inferences at the species level, right? But sometimes I think that there might have been different demographic outcomes when these two species encountered at local level. And we see that also from the results of the genetic analysis, for instance, from Bachokiro and Zlatikun, some lineages that have some genetic trace of Neanderthal integration belong to lineages that got extinct, that didn't leave ancestors, and are, well, to consider dead lineages within our species, are more closely related to Asian populations. So perhaps we should, this is my suggestion, we should drop two generalistic conclusions and focus instead on what we see at the local level. Because, for instance, assimilation as an overall conclusion is, of course, not supported, I agree with you, but the genetic data. But at local level, it might well have been that some dispersing population of Homo sapiens absorbed Neanderthals, and in other cases there was full replacement, in other cases there were. So I think perhaps one way to move this debate forward is to start thinking at the local level.
For sure, I think it's a good suggestion. I think, but the problem is that the local level, so first we should have to define local, and we don't have that many data. I mean, often we have a site and next site is, I don't know, 1,000 kilometers apart. I mean, same age, same dating, same sequence, and so on. So comparability in general is a problem in prehistory. And I think all of this big debate that don't go, they turn around, they come from either from bad theory at the basis, and this maybe we can work on it, or they come from poor archaeological record. And this, I mean, yeah, we can go on excavation, we can add data, we can do other things, but it's really hard. So of course, to go local would be better, but sometimes we don't, because we don't have enough data. So this is a problem. And then also going local, maybe you should, the problem is what is the question? What do we want to know? So how Neanderthal disappeared, is why, is how far they were with the modern behavior, is what is the question? So it depends on the question if we can answer at local level or not, to me. So I don't know if I answered, but yeah.
If I have another quick question, if I can.
Go ahead.
Yeah, so I was wondering, what would you take it to be your take-home message from this presentation? That the archaeological evidence on Neanderthal symbolic behavior is the jury is out on that case, or that it has been differentially explored by the two species. So we can admit Neanderthals at a high table of symbolic cognition, but they explored it in a different way from our species, because the demographics were different, because we had different evolutionary paths, the environment posed constraints that were different in the two cases. So what do you
to me is that we shall explode. The message to me should be that we shall explode completely the concept of symbolism and behavioral modernity as we use it now. Because we don't know if Neanderthals use symbols, not only because the archaeological record is ambiguous, but we don't know if these signs, if these marks, sorry, Sylvia, are symbols. So this is one problem. And so to me, is the whole framework should be somehow reworked. And so we have to decide if we want to treat it as a separate species, and if it's a separate species, we rewrite models based on Neanderthal behavior. And then we try to understand if there is accumulation. They're doing this with chimpanzees, come on, and we have tons of data from Neanderthals. It's the better known fossil species, and we are not able to build a narrative built on Neanderthals and not on comparison between sapiens and Neanderthals. To me, this is the message somehow. So we are doing it with chimps, with capuchin monkeys, with dolphins, with whales, and we can't do with Neanderthals to understand how their own mechanism, cultural mechanism works. I think we can do it. We could, someone, not us.
I would have loads of questions, but I will leave that for another time.
We want to hear them now.
Okay, can I go ahead?
Yeah, well, one.
One. So what about Brunicle Cave? Well, I'm curious about your thoughts on Neanderthal exploration of deep spaces in the cave.
I didn't put it on because I have really ambiguous feeling about that. I feel it's possible they built something. I'm not completely skeptical, but I was chatting before this presentation. I was sharing thoughts in my family, and Paolo, he said, we don't know, maybe Neanderthal danced or singed or whatever. We don't know. Here we're talking only, material culture. So maybe they were a dancer, fantastic, fabulous dancers, and we'll never know. So there are so many expressions of behavior. We have seen, a chimp shrine, so no problem. But to me, that archaeological evidence, I can't have an opinion about how is reliable. Because I know very well Jacques Joubert. I really appreciate him, so I trust him somehow. At the same time, I'm still skeptical because I'm skeptical by nature. So this is also why I didn't put it in. I think it's possible, but I think it's really hard to say. And also, there is a relation between Neanderthal and caves. They had to use caves because they live in glacial Europe. So for sure, they somehow managed to explore them and to do also with other animals living in it. So why not?
Are there any more questions? Andra, do you have another question? Because if you do,
we'll have.
I'll ask my own, and then I'll juggle back to you.
Yeah, sure.
I was quite surprised to see in one of your slides what I recognized as La Trampa, but I'm not really sure it is La Trampa that you showed from La Pasiega.
Yes, I'm not sure because
I was under the impression that since it's in association in La Pasiega with what they call the inscription, which is not Neanderthal, that's sapiens through and through. I was very surprised to see it associated to Neanderthal behavior. And if that were the case, I mean, I know that there's a debate, there's controversy over the dating and all of that.
The problem is
It
that
was surprising to actually claim that it is Neanderthal.
the problem is that, you know, they go with, okay, we date this art, we dismiss the dates younger than 40,000, we like the dates around 70,000, and then has been Neanderthals all over. But, you know, cave art is complicated. I'm sorry, my friend Marina is not here, but she knows I don't work on rock art because I find it so difficult to say something that is not ridiculous. To me, really, I feel ridiculous myself, and most of the talk
I wrote a book on that. Thank you.
No, it's different. But you see what I mean? It's so hard not to be, not to.
No, you don't have dates. You simply do not have
dates. You have poor ethnographic comparison with aborigines. I mean, things that. Or you have very old scheme. It's really hard. And this is one of the reasons I've never worked on this, because I don't like to say things I'm not fully convinced, and I don't like either to say nothing. And but
so you're saying that you're saying that they found evidence to associate something to Neanderthal behavior, and then they sort of, you know, bulked it up. And
I think so. But I have to say I don't know very well the sites, and so possibly it was me who took the wrong picture. But you know, they take the whole site and they say, okay, then it's Neanderthals.
Right.
And also I read that it's associated with Solutrean. It was associated with Solutrean lithics. So, you know, to me, it's a mess. The whole Spanish stuff is a mess. It would be done with another perspective. Say, okay, who did this? When?
Yeah. La Pasiega is a messy cave in and of itself. I was hoping she would be done, but no, Sarah has another question.
No, I have
Sarah has something to add.
I have to answer you. Sylvia, because they associate to Neanderthals because the dates only based on the very old dates, because at that time there were no Homo sapiens, are still not Homo sapiens found in Iberian Peninsula so old. You know, like now we have Portugal with Picarejo with 41,000 years old, just because they found finally some lithics. But the problem is in lithics technology, they don't find Homo sapiens in Iberia. And of course, the dates are important. So
yeah, but you know, they have been calling Mousterian the things in North Africa since, I mean, they started to call it MSA, I don't know, 3 years ago. Exactly. Before it was Mousterian. So it was Mousterian each side. And also there has been claims that there were Neanderthals in Northern Africa for years. Exactly. So, you know.
This is why they associate to Neanderthal, by the way.
Yeah. And I thought Aegean specialists were confused. Goodness me. Andra, do you have another question?
Right. So, yeah, in relation to the species concept.
No.
That's a full start. I'm not going to ask you a question about the species.
You know better than me.
Yeah. Don't worry. But what does the fact that we consider Neanderthals and Homo sapiens separate species? What are the implications of this taxonomic categorization for the archaeology? And I wanted to ask your comment on whether you think that cultural traits can not respect taxonomic affiliations, because when we talk about genes and biological traits, we have a vertical way of transmission, so things are more orderly. But when we talk about culture, things start to be a little bit messier. So taxonomy, biological taxonomy in that case, doesn't necessarily tell us much about whether these expressions can travel from one species to the other. And there are evidence, for instance, of course, pretty much debated and controversial of engravings being done in Java, perhaps by Homo erectus. So, so is taxonomy useful? Is biological taxonomy useful to make inferences about archaeological capabilities or cognitive capabilities, in your opinion?
Yes, I am old school in this. I don't like the idea that, I mean, I think that species are peculiar, you know. I mean, what we observe in nature is that each species has its niche, has its behavior, has its eventually transmits culture. At the same time, we all have a common ancestor. Right. So the person who did the marking in Java, okay, is an erectus, but let's say, but still, we, I mean, we are the nephews of the erectus somehow, you know. So there could be a continuity. At the same time, when a behavior, it happens once, I mean, we know something happened once. I don't know. I'm not sure it's wise to give it all this importance. I would rather have a systemic approach. So these species in this environment, in this time, and all that I know about this, not putting it into a scale. I think in archaeology, sometimes we are naive. You know, we do what the natural scientists did. I don't know, 100 before. And then we repeat, and the time it takes to us to become, I mean, to understand that we have to update our models is so long. We are so conservative. And so I think I like the species concept, and I think it's useful. Of course, we know it's a convention somehow, but to me, an erectus of Java is not the same as me. There are years and spaces that separate us, and so. But
right.
Of course,
Can I have just a quick final question? And then
well, we need to invite you and give a talk.
Oh no!
Yes, you shall. She's so good. She's so good.
No, I was just.
You cannot imagine how much.
Do you think, Enza, that a behavior being expressed once in a peculiar site answers a different question than a behavior being seen systematically across the archaeological record? Because I think, for instance, that if we have good evidence that, for instance, the Neanderthals used ornaments at this peculiar site, then the question about cognitive capabilities of prerequisites is a yes. But a fact that is not systematically explored, I think it's a much more interesting question, because it tells us something about transmission, right?
Yeah, but the same behavior can answer to different questions. You said it. So the prerequisites, you know, my cat, what she does, she takes feathers outside and she brings in the feathers. And we were wondering, okay, she brings the feather because she likes the feather. She brings in the feather because she wants to show us that she could catch a pigeon, but actually she brings the feather. Or she brings in the feather because she likes the feather. You know, having the prerequisite for doing something, it's not meaningful unless you do it, to me.
Right.
Because the prerequisite is, I don't know, we study material culture. We need to see it. So I know, I'm very materialist, I know it. That's why usually I don't work on this stuff. But yeah, but we will continue on it, Andra, and
sure,
invite her.
But how do you know? This actually brings about a question that I deem interesting. How do you define intentionality when it comes to these marks, not signs, marks? What are the ingredients that you look for to frame it? Yeah. Is it a material constraint of the support, of the epigraphic, let's say, support?
Usually,
although it's not epigraphic. Is it an affordance of the material support? Well, how is it that you actually go about setting the scene for that intentionality?
Mm-hmm. For a processualist approach, it would have been the effort, you know. So if the effort is big, then you want to do it. Otherwise, why do the effort? But of course, it's not that simple, because sometimes you do things. How many times in our life we do things and we say, why? So, but the only way to measure intentionality to me is the effort. Otherwise, I don't know. So if it's complicated, it's like the question I got, you know, you need 300 strikes to make that sign on that mark on Gibraltar thing. And so you want to do it. But maybe you want to do it because you're nervous.
Well, that's very post-processualist. You're not as processualist as you claim to be. Thank you so much, everybody, for having stuck with us and the Italian theatre this long. It was lovely to have Enza. I feel less guilty to have invited a friend over because it was wonderful and it was such good fun. And I would have loved to delve into the intricacies of what analogy does and what imagination does, and Captain Marvel, that looks uncannily like me.
This is the surprise.
But that said, it was a pleasure to have all of you. And let me remind you before we bid you farewell that we're going to have Anna Bonifazi from the University of Cologne in a week's time at 4:30 on Friday, the 1st of July. Thank you, everybody. Thank you to the Inscribe team for being here. Thank you, Cristina. Thank you, Mattia. Thank you, Ludo.
Thank you, Enza.